Uh, Welcome everybody to this particular session on top IAS publications, and welcome Professor Avipsa, who is going to lead the session today. So the top IAS publication series is one of these series of our Center for Software and IT Management, IIM Bangalore, which is primarily to celebrate the top publications in the information systems domain from India-based authors. And when we say top information systems publication, we mean publications in the Financial Times Rank Journal or Senior Scholar Premium IS journals. And so, in that, this is the fourth episode of such seminar. And for this, we have Professor Avipsa, who has recently got her paper published in the Decision Support System, one of the top ranked IS journals, as I mentioned. Right. And so welcome, Professor Avipsa, over to you, and look forward to this engaging presentation. And hopefully it will inspire others to also publish in such top journals.
Thank you so much, Professor Mayank, for inviting me, first of all, to a seminar that is titled like that. So it is, it is kind of, the seminar itself puts me on a huge pedestal. So makes me feel very good that, I have published this. So thank you so much for inviting. Um, Professor Rao is also here, I think. So I was not
Yeah,
expecting.
so we invite all the authors and they decide on who to present. So glad to have Professor Rahul and Professor Rao also joining for this for the authors, and they
Yeah,
mutually
so
decide.
I did
Yeah.
not tell them, okay, because like if I'm talking about it and they are there and then I say something wrong, they're going to figure it out. So I did not say, but they had figured it out and they have decided to join. So good for us, good for
And
the.
we have Professor Raghav Rao as a panelist also, so in case he wants to comment.
Okay, sure. Thank you, sir. Hello, sir. You can hear me, right?
You
Okay,
can unmute yourself, sir, and speak.
okay. I think he's just yeah, he's there. Okay. Without delaying much, what I understand is we have a mix of participants, both from academic backgrounds and also, I guess, from MBA students and other students, right? So, so what I try to do my best is make it less, information, and talk about the problem statement that we are looking at, and giving a little bit of a story rather than talking too much about what we go into the methods and all of that, which also, we will definitely discuss. But before I start, I wanted to kind of tell all of us about the paper history of the paper. So while there are other publications, but this publication is particularly very close to my heart because very how do I put it, like very ironically, we are talking about the resilience of mobile payments in the paper, and then it's also a little bit about our resilience with the paper, because we have been working on it for a very long time. And as my co-authors are here, so there were times I was giving up, and they said, no, it is really interesting, we should not give up and we should go on. And finally, while I was preparing this presentation, I realized that with the review cycles and all of that, it has actually, the story is pretty interesting, and I am glad that my co-authors has pushed me towards this. More interestingly, why it is interesting is because some of you would be knowing, might have attended my other talks. So throughout, I have been working with mobile payments. So the user side of mobile payment, why people are using it, has always been very close to my heart. And the prior studies also looked at mobile payments from a different perspective. They were looking at, various affordances, various uses of mobile payment from affordances and constraints kind of lenses. Then, interestingly, there was one paper which is, I would say, kind of a motivation to this paper, where I had looked at mobile payments versus convenience versus risk, right? So with these studies, as I was constantly working on mobile payment for my research work throughout, there was one glaring thing that I realized when I started this project is that, people always say that mobile payment is coming into the picture. I'll just go into the motivation as we talk. So you see the motivation, the quote that I have put up over here. So people kind of always say that, cash is going to win again. People are going back to cash, right? And there are news headlines, and it's just not one newspaper headlines. There are at least 4 or 5 paper headlines I have seen that has used something very similar to this sentence over here. Cash is the biggest enemy of mobile payments, right? So, on one side, people are promoting mobile payment as a technology, because of course it has potential of financial inclusion. It has, it's even from a government perspective, India government has been pushing mobile payments through unified payment interface, the UPI that we have more commonly. So all of this is happening, and despite of that, right, if you watch the news, if you see the numbers, cash has been coming in back and forth, right? So it kind of, it was always I was kind of wondering that, looking at mobile payment in silo, which I also honestly have done throughout, and I'm also looking at it from a different perspective now, but looking at it in silo without including its biggest enemy wouldn't be complete, right? So, to add to all the things that I and other authors have done on mobile payment studies, of course, very important work. But along with that, bringing in this cash as a focus of mobile payments would kind of give us a new perspective, help us understand how people are balancing the use of cash, right, with mobile payment, right? And this, cash becoming favorite, mobile payment becoming favorite, these things happening with each other, this is more around very contextually driven, right? It is not just about the fact that, I as a person, I like mobile payment, I love Paytm, Google Pay. It's not like that, but it is more like the context in which I am in, right? And all of you would be able to relate to what I'm trying to say is, of course, around COVID. Yes, I mean, banks was very hard to get into, and there were queues, and there were norms. You have to stand far away. So accessing banks, accessing ATMs were a huge problem. So what do? You use mobile payments, right? You don't want to go out of your home, right? I believe all of us are from India, so the famous demonetization that kind of influenced a lot of mobile payment studies. That was also a time. I mean, what do? We have to use mobile payments, right? So this context is always playing a role in our heads. On the other hand, if you talk to a little bit of older generation, for example, I can vouch for my mother. She's very afraid to kind of touch mobile payments because she's reading all this news about frauds and cyber threats and all of that happening, people taking away money online and all of that, and that also kind of pushes her away from using it, right? But these things are also, it's not individualistic, or it's not about the technology, what mobile payment can offer, but along with that, it is intertwined with the context in which people are using it. So with this, this thing that was in my mind, I started, wanted to look at mobile payment versus cash and how the context influences it. And when I started looking at it, I realized that, it is people more than what they can do, right? Mobile payment or cash can do more than that, because it is a financial transaction we are talking about, right? Not just any transaction, and people are hypersensitive about anything related to finance and losing money, etc. They are often driven by fear rather than by the positive things, right? Of course, the positive things are also there, but they are often, when we have two technologies, often the fear of one technology pushes them to use the other technology, right? So this is what I was thinking that, okay, so let me see, like, what I am thinking, is there some evidence of it? And can I get some evidence of it? So in this direction, with this in my head, and, Professor Dey, I don't know if he's joined. So Professor Dey and Professor Rao, they would always, when we would have these research discussions, they would always tell me stories. Oh, I went here and, we listened to this, and somebody was saying this is why, I prefer cash. And we were having these discussions, right, around cash and mobile payments and all of that. And that's when that is basically very honestly, very sorry, blatantly the motivation that we got to start this study on cash and versus mobile payment and balancing their risks. So yes, so that is the research objective, as you can see on the screen also, to develop a research framework to examine the risk between mobile payment and cash. And the distinctness of these two are that one is contactless and one needs contact, one is physical. So we were kind of trying to bring that perspective, right? So then we to examine this, we saw that this balancing of risk of two different things, right? We are not talking about risk of just technology, which we do have in the literature, but balancing the risk of two different things and shifting from one thing to other, it was a little hard to find in our traditional literature. So we went beyond that and we found a trade-off framework in the public health literature, risk-risk trade-off framework. I'll go into the details of that. So that provided us to develop the research framework, and we used surveys of online survey actually across India, and we actually collected around 1700 data, but we were able to use 1403 usable surveys. And also we collected some qualitative data with that to kind of, justify the findings. Professor Dey is one of the persons who believes that, it is not enough to just say the numbers, but back it out with some qualitative study so that we understand the nuances that is happening. And that's where we decided that let us also go for a qualitative work, which will not exactly mix method, but triangulate the findings that we are seeing. And the findings was quite interesting. So we not only found a plethora of risks on both the sides, and they were significantly affecting and disrupting the use of mobile payment, right? So there were risks connected to mobile payment also, which were disrupting its use. At the same time, we realized that, the final decision of using mobile payment and not using mobile payment would be very contextually driven, along with the technology or cash, for that matter, along with the nature of it, how it is able to provide that, provide that security or safety from that risk, right? So there's a huge, decision making for users going around the fact that whether I see this as risky, whether I see the other one as risky, and accordingly they are deciding. And this risk is indirectly heavily contextual in nature, right? So that is what we found, and we'll see as we go along. I'll tell you the stories further. Okay. By the way, these pictures that I have put, it is not from that survey because it was an online survey collected during COVID. However, these are a part of our bigger project, and where we go out and collect data from various vendors and users and all of that transacting. We try to capture the market thing. So I have just, kind of put in there so that we can have an idea of what's going on. Okay. So moving on to, motivation, I kind of already told you the story. I got excited and I told you the story already. But what is interesting is that, yes, I mean, there is evidence from all the sides that mobile payment is becoming very important now. Most of the commercial transactions are relying on mobile payments now, including small vendors and everything. And intuitively, if you think about it, around COVID, the mobile payment transactions will surge, right? And as we have said, contextually, mobile payment transactions are dependent contextually. Now in COVID, you can't go to bank and you are worried that the cash might be carrying virus and all of that. So yes, of course, right? So it created a fear around cash. It created a problem around cash, right? So that is one side of it. However, if you see the second bullet point, uh, we also noticed that because all these transactions were online around that time and there was a huge surge in online transactions, um, these people, I mean, cyber criminals and all of that, they got an opportunity because, now most of the transactions are online, etc. So they got this huge opportunity, and we saw that the data showed that there was as high as a 400% increase in the online fraud, right? And I mean, that would definitely create a panic around mobile payment transactions also, because there is so high report of cyber crimes and it's all over the internet. If you remember, right, we read this story, this kind of new innovative crime has come in, that has come in, all of those stories were coming up, right? So now what we realize that this is a very interesting, kind of a field, right? Where on one side, you don't want to touch cash, and there was all that, now it seems like history, but there was all those fear, like, those notes are going to carry the virus, or if we go out to transact, then we are going to carry the virus, or, if we are giving money to somebody, that person will come close to me. So all those fears were there around cash. So I definitely don't want to touch cash, which has gone through multiple hands. But on the other side, I am sensitive about money, and mobile payment is reporting so many cyber crimes. So what are people doing about it? How are they balancing it, right? So this whole, thing that was happening around the pandemic kind of motivated us to look at it from a trade-off perspective, because now you have fear of cash, you're carrying cash, this, you don't want to go out to the banks, etc., and you have the fear of mobile payment money also getting stolen by cybercrimes, because there's such a high rate of cybercrime around this time. So how am I going to balance these two things, right? Okay, there's some questions I have missed. How to address the limitation? Yeah, we'll come to that, Dr. Rakesh. I'm sorry that I am not answering it right now, because as we go on, some of the things anyway you are asking, we'll try to answer that. Okay. So going back to it, so we were seeing that now people are kind of trading off one risk over the other, right? Both are risky, so I have to anyway transact, I have to live my life, so I am going to do this trade-off, and this kind of got us thinking that we have to develop a trade-off framework, right? Basically, we have to see how these risks are being traded off, so that people can eventually decide which to choose over what. So to come up with this trade-off framework, again, I mentioned earlier, so exactly, we have a lot of studies on risks and we use them, right? We use the theories on risk and all of that, but we've realized that there's no particular trade-off framework in our literature. That's when we looked at something called a risk-risk trade-off framework in health and environmental studies. I'll go into the details, and then we went ahead, developed, and the model and validated it. A quick, literature about, just because, where are we, how are we contributing to mobile payments literature also. So for that purpose, so why we needed to, borrow from another completely, unrelated literature, why we needed to borrow, where were we coming from. So to put us in that position, just a little bit of recap on the literature. So, there was a huge, I mean, I myself work on it. So there's a huge mobile payment usage and adoption literature already. And we are still on that, right? We are still trying to see why people are using mobile payments based on their balance between the risks, right? So we are still trying to look at that, but they have not, this past frameworks have not exactly looked at the role of cash, and we are now bringing in cash into the picture, right? um, Perceived risks of mobile payments also have been studied. In fact, my paper on convenience versus risk looks at multiple facets of risk. Again, these facets are mobile payment focused. We don't have these facets of risk of other alternatives to mobile payment also. There is, interestingly, despite of me saying that there's so less studies on cash and all, but there are studies that has looked at generally, why people are switching from cash to mobile payment, right? However, we are now looking at a situation where people know mobile payment, they have kind of done the first switching, but now how they are balancing it. So that is where we are furthering that kind of literature. And of course, what we personally feel very important is the contextual theorization part. How important in all of these stories the context plays a role, right? So this is something, it goes way beyond mobile payment literature standpoint in academia, because now context focused theorizing is being asked for in across IS domain, right? Not just mobile payments. So, we are kind of trying to develop the theory from a context focused perspective to meet those needs. Okay. Now coming to the theory that I have been kind of telling you that, we had to borrow the theory from another domain, and, why we had to do that. So interestingly, the story of this theory is also pretty interesting, right? So three of us were kind of wondering, like, we don't have an exact trade-off framework. How do we, kind of address this? And then we kind of came across this theory which talks about, it's from the public health environment. So it talks about people when there is this substance, which is substance as in maybe it could be a gas, liquid, or something that is being used either in a healthcare setup or in an industry setup, right? And then it has been figured out that this substance that has been used for a while now, it is hazardous, right? People have figured it out that they have been using with masks, etc., but it has proved to be hazardous, right? So what obviously people will do, so if a substitute of that hazardous substance is available, they are going to move to the substitute, right? But the thing is that even in the public health environmental literature, even there, they see that the substitute also is not risk-free, right? And that is the whole reason the substitute was not as popular in the beginning to start with, right? So the substitute also has a set of risk, and the substance that we are talking about that has health hazard has a set of health hazard risk. And we were able to draw this parallel with this substitute and health hazard, interestingly, because at that point in time, people were considering cash as health hazardous, right? People were thinking that if I touch cash, I'm going to get contaminated with COVID. If I go somewhere to transact with cash, then that person will come near me and I'll contract COVID. So this was all in people's head, right? So this fear, this thing that cash is becoming a health hazard, this fear itself was very close to how hazardous substances risks were also perceived in public health domain. And that's where we drew the framework from, right? So based on the framework, if you look at the text in yellow that I've put in, we decided to develop our own framework. Only we are not going to talk about hazardous substance, but we are going to talk about the hazards or risk or fear around cash, right? Versus the hazards or the risks of the substitute technology. If you can see the diagram over here. So the substitute technology, which is mobile payment in our case, right? So we were going to look at these two, and we are looking, our primary purpose of the study is still to look at mobile payment use, why people are using mobile payment. So the risks of mobile payment definitely is going to bring it down, right? You are going to go back, not use it. So hence it is negatively impacting. And the risk of using the hazardous substance, if that is very high, like cash, right? If you feel cash is very risky and I'm going to fall sick if I use cash, then I am going to shift towards mobile payments, right? That is the usage of the technology as the dependent variable. So the effect is positive, right? Interestingly, what we added is that was not a part of the original theory, but we adapted the theory and improved it by using the contextual factor, because as I said, like for mobile payment, historically, we have always seen, we have multiple study evidences that says the context plays a huge role in its use and adoption, right? So we included context, but what is the context that we are talking about over here, right? So that's when we realized that the fear of, cash, like cash is going to make me sick. If I use cash, I'm going to fall sick, etc. Heavily dependent on where you are, right? I'll just, to make it interesting, I'll just tell you the story. So I was at that time in the very beginning of the study when I started, I was in IIM Kozhikode, and then I moved to IIM Calcutta. Throughout the COVID, all of this was happening. I was moving. So in IIM Kozhikode, when I was there, because if you remember, Kerala had managed COVID very well in the beginning, right? So the fear of cash and all was much less, right? However, when I was talking to Professor Day, he was saying that people do actually are worried about cash and this thing. And when I was talking to my mother, who was during COVID in Kolkata, she was saying, "Oh my God, I actually use Dettol to kind of wipe off the virus from cash." So this has got me thinking that what is this coming from, right? Of course, this is just anecdotal, but what is this coming from? So that's when we realized that the context, right, whether that location is heavily influenced by that particular thing which is adding to the hazardousness, right? So if you look at the screen here, the contextual severity is affecting the hazardousness of the substance, right? If you draw parallels, right, if a factory has a lot of those of hazardous substance, that factory will be people will be more worried about being affected by that hazard, right? So we brought in the contextual factor over here. This kind of is the entire story of where our development of our framework, etc., right? So based on this theory, now we are going into, so if you look at the two boxes, right, risks of hazardous substance and risk of mobile payment, which is the substitute technology, this is just a box, right? So we have to find out what these risks are, right? We have to develop these risks, right? What are the risks we are talking about? Because talking from a point of view of environmental studies doesn't solve our problem. We have to now understand the same for cash, right? We have to understand the same for mobile payments. For mobile payment, it was easier because there were multiple studies that have found out the risks of mobile payment, but cash was what we were investigating from the beginning. Okay. All right. Moving on. So now, you get a picture, right? We have to expand the risk box. We have to expand risk of hazardous substance, cash box. We have to expand the risk of substitute technology, mobile payment box. So as we were expanding that, we figured out what are the hazards related to cash and how are basically we going to figure that out, right? So again, we went back to the environmental science literature actually. So because you were worried about during COVID, you were worried about using cash on multiple layers, right? Multiple reasons you are worried about cash. But all of these risks are not similar. So how do we categorize them? How do we understand them separately, differently, right? So we went back to the literature again, and we saw that, in very interestingly, I mean, how beautifully, the cash was actually acting as a hazardous substance. There were two major kinds of hazards connected to it, right? So one was you get exposed to the substance and you fall sick. That is one type of hazard, right? The other type of hazard is using that substance is difficult, right? It exposes you to multiple hazards. You understand the difference? So one is you are exposed directly, that chemical you're inhaling is bad for you. The other is because you're using this chemical, maybe this chemical works only in that machinery and that machinery is hazardous to you, or that exposes to you another chemical. So we saw cash also had these two types of, basically two broad categories of risk. One was it was directly exposing you to coronavirus. The other was, as you can see on the board, the constraint based risk, right? So otherwise you go to the ATM, you go to the bank, etc., then you are kind of exposed to the risk, right? So we found these two were the major types, but within the exposure to the health hazard, again, because we are talking about cash, very different from hazardous substances, we saw that people were kind of worried about cash in three main types. One is they were worried that it is contaminating you, right? You don't want to touch it, if you remember. The other is you are giving cash to somebody, somebody is giving you back cash, you are touching their hand, you are coming close to their mouth, right? All of this, So this was exposing you. And the third was that you are, going to the bank, and this bank is, kind of exposing you to the virus, right? So these were, you are directly affected by the virus, right? On the other side, now you have to go to the bank, right? And that itself is problematic because of COVID-19, because you don't want to step out of your home, there's COVID-19, there's lockdown, there's etc., etc. So it is a constraint. So it is not directly the hazard, but this hazardous substance use is creating other kind of hazards for you, right? Other kind of complications for you, operational complications for you. That was the constraint-based risk. So I'll quickly go to the next slide and come back. So if you see the box, we expanded the box, right? We started with the smaller box and then we expanded the box. So this expanded version of the box has these four kinds of risk for cash, right? Contamination risk, transmission risk, exposure risk, constraint risk. Okay. Going back, this is the mobile payment risk. Now, this was a little bit easier for us. The previous one, as you can realize, we had a lot of thinking, a lot of looking at the hazardous substance literature, a lot of theorization going on there. However, in the mobile payment risk, thanks to our prior researchers, we have a huge plethora of risks available. So we used past literature. But there was one interesting phenomena that we were seeing called the social risk, which is something that we have introduced. So it is based on earlier other constructs related to social influence, etc. But this social risk is that you want to use mobile payment, but the people you are transacting with don't want to use it, or they have some issue with it. Like I told you the story, right? My mother has huge issue with it. So socially, it is not acceptable, right? So that we termed it as a social risk of using the technology, which we were actually kind of seeing around COVID time. So yeah, so this is again the plethora of risks for mobile payments, and we were kind of balancing these two risks. And like we said, the contextual severity of the location, right? I said, like, mobile payment is heavily contextual, right? Hazards are heavily contextual based on the location of the hazard, right? So based on that, we also included the moderation, which we had earlier presented. So we all included the moderation for everything connected directly to the coronavirus risk, right? The actual hazard risk, not the constraint risk, but actual, why is it moving? Sorry. The actual hazard risk, right? So I think, so this is half of the paper. So we developed the framework. Then before I go into the testing part, which is kind of seeing if the framework is right or not, I will just quickly look at the questions that is there, because this kind of wraps up the story on where we started the framework, and then we move on to the testing of the framework. So if you have any questions now, I can take that and then move on to how we tested the model. Let me see Rakesh's question.
Dr. Rakesh had one question. Rakesh Mohanty.
Yes. How to address the limitation to reduce the risk of unnecessary and instantaneous expenditure in contactless payments? Yes, that's a very interesting point. Interestingly, as we discuss the implications, we have included that as one of the risks of mobile payment. And currently, if you look at the types of risks of mobile payment here, the 5 types of risk. I'll just go back to the previous slide quickly. 5 types of risk of mobile payments. So we are not including unnecessary expenditure on mobile payment, because that is more of your expense behavior, but something very similar to that. If you see this possibility of malfunction, right? As in, like, sometimes you press 100, instead of 100 you're pressing 1000, right? One extra zero, right? So you are kind of doing those kind of mistakes. Those have been attended to. However, this is very interesting, and I completely agree that this is something that have not been already looked at in the literature. And maybe, as I said, I mainly work on mobile payments, so I will definitely, in my next study, try to figure out if that is a case. And many people agree that mobile payment kind of makes you, because it's so easy to transact and you don't feel you are losing that money, right? That feel is not there. So if that is an additional risk of mobile payment, totally, completely agree. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, there are no other questions, so I'll just move on. Okay. So now, we have done all the fancy work. We have looked into literature. We have seen this is happening. So we developed the framework. Now the harder part is coming. We have to validate the framework, if whatever we have said, whatever we have imagined in our head is correct or not. So to validate that, we actually took the help of, I should put it on the screen. So we took the help of a market research agency called Market Excel, and they are very helpful. And so they collected around, so I just said as many as you can collect, because this is a new phenomena and I really need a lot of data. So they kind of, around COVID time, online, because they couldn't send people to the market and all of that. So they collected around 1,700 samples, right? But of course, we have tests for checking if the results are accurate. I mean, people are careful in answering that. We have some attention checks and all of that. So after screening that out, we were left with around 403 users who were sincere and marked it, which is also, I believe, a very good number. So yeah, so that is where we got a little bit lucky, that we were able to get such good number of samples of people sincerely attending to our questions. And I guess why this was the case, because people were also intrigued around that time, cash, mobile payment and all of that. So they were kind of answering it. Now, we used PLS SEM. We used that Smart PLS 4.0. 4.0 actually came very recently, to be honest. So I started with 3.0 and then the new one came. So then I used Smart PLS 4.0, the final model testing. And we did all the reliability, validity tests. And if any of you are interested, I have the paper ready with me, so I can show you the various tests that I did. So basically, finally we got a reliable model that was there. Interestingly, we also have the qualitative data, and this was something very interesting. And thanks to Professor Day and Professor Rao for suggesting this. So I am a very empirical, or you can say very objective person, right? I believe in objective data, but also there are nuances which often cannot be captured so well in surveys, and that's why qualitative is becoming so now gaining popularity. So for that, what we did is, it was not possible in COVID to go and collect from the market and all of that. So we added one question, open-ended question, and we hoped that people answered this question. And interestingly, because it was COVID and people were intrigued, most of them gave an answer. Some of them gave small words, some of them just wrote a very fast running sentence, but most of them gave their opinion. And the question was on risks of mobile payment and cash. Which one do you find more risky? Why do you find them more risky? Right? And this was kind of validating what we were finding from the survey, these kind of things. So I'll just show you quickly. Okay, I have 15 minutes. So, well, this is a very long model, so it's just going on the top. So basically, this entire thing was set in the context of health crisis of mobile payment and cyber crimes, right? And these were the factors that we have developed in the model, right? What is interesting to see is that which of these factors were significant from our data. And again, because we have a good set of data, this kind of gives us a good result of what people really care about and what people don't care about when it comes to their decision of mobile payment use, right? And you say R square 3.3 is also quite good for a new model with behavioral studies, right? So we can say that what the model is saying is kind of representative of what people are thinking too. So interestingly, although we thought all of the risks of cash would be significant, people found contamination risk, right? Which is the most common one, right? Cash has COVID virus stuck to it, right? So this is the contamination risk. So people found this contamination risk extremely significant. So that is what made people, one of the key reasons people to shift to mobile payments, right? The other was, we honestly speaking, we did not think this way, but the constraint that COVID-19 imposed because of lockdowns, the constraint on being able to use cash that COVID-19 imposed, that also proved to be pretty significant, as you can see on the screen. So these two were kind of very important. Exposure risk was also, one important factor, because it was slightly significant. So exposure risk is related to your going outside, transacting with cash, and getting exposed in those public places. However, interestingly, the transmission risk was not significant in this study, right? As in, the fact that I feel that I am giving money to somebody and somebody is giving money back to me, and that is why there is, I'm going to get COVID. Yes, people did talk about it in the qualitative study, but clearly, when we are doing an entire model, this factor was less worrying to the people. People feared this factor less than the other reasons, right? What was even more interesting in our finding is when it came to looking at the mobile payment risk, we would have thought like people would be worried about losing money, financial risk because of this cyber crime, cyber threats, and all of that. We thought they will be worried more about it. But interestingly, that was not their primary concern of when they are taking mobile payment use. But performance risk, something that I was talking to Dr. Rakesh about right now, right? The performance risk, the fact that, I might make an error and more money might get transacted, right? Or, something happens in between. And not a part of this study, but just I wanted to add, so because it's interesting that we are talking about it. So a very recent study on mobile payments that I am doing now, this performance risk is actually very significant, as people who are not very digitally savvy, they have said that many a times a transaction got stuck, they lost the money, they called the people, but it was not solved, they did not get the money back, and this money was good amount, like in thousands, right? In 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. So, I mean, unrelated to the study, but you see that this performance risk is a problem. Like, despite of we having such good UPI systems and technologies in place, performance risk is becoming an important risk that deters people from using mobile payment. Similarly, security risk, well, that is something we posited too. I mean, we were thinking it will happen. So security risk is around the measures that mobile payment give. So, the authentication and all of that. So if those measures are poor, obviously you will be wary of using that technology. Social risk, interestingly, which we kind of brought into the picture, which was not identified earlier, was very significant. And that means people do care about, if others are, and of course, it's mobile payment is a high network effect technology. So others in the network and what others are thinking, if they are saying, no, don't use it, that affects the usage there. So this was kind of interesting. I'll talk for a few seconds about the contextual severity, because that brings in the contextual theorization part. So contextual severity of the location was captured by asking them, how heavily is COVID affecting your location? Okay, so we were trying to capture the hazardous substance, which is the cache, the effect of that cache, the moderating effect of the context on that cache, right? If you are, a metaphor is, if it's a factory and there's a hazardous chemical, how hazardous is that factory? How much you have to use that chemical? How much you will be exposed to that chemical? So that's the context, right? So here, how badly COVID has spread is the context, right? So we are capturing contextual severity like that. And we saw that the contextual severity affects the contamination risk significantly. It moderates, not affects contamination risk. It moderates the effect of contamination risk positively. So more COVID area, you will obviously, it also comes intuitively, you will perceive greater risk of contamination through cache, right? Because, that area is COVID affected. So on that, we also kind of did a moderation graph. So that this shows, as you can see on the dotted line and the, give me 1 second, I'm trying to move the ribbon here and there. So the two dotted lines, so one is a location that is low on contextual severity, and the other is a location that is high on contextual severity. So the contamination risk in the location that is high on severity, the contamination risk of cache, remember that, with the contamination risk rising, the mobile payment use will rise, right? So if you are in a very highly COVID affected region, then if you're in a highly COVID affected region, basically the outcome is you're going to use mobile payment, right? Because the contamination risk is moderating the influence. So as the COVID contamination risk goes up, mobile payment usage will go up. But however, if you are in a low affected COVID situation context, then contamination risk will not have much effect on mobile payment usage. So probably you will continue using cash. So this, although it's just a moderation graph of what we have already found, this kind of sums up the contextual theorization that we were kind of bringing in. I was telling you that the context affect mobile payment usage and stuff like that. Okay. Now, quickly, I mean, I don't want to, I've been talking about the same thing for a while. So quickly, so that qualitative findings, I did not put all of them because, I don't want to go through all of them, but the qualitative findings kind of, as Professor Day was kind of pushing me to, it was telling the story, not telling the story, but rather explaining the story that we have already found from the data. So the story was, well, for contamination risk, yes, mobile payments are safe due to not touching surfaces with contaminated virus. I mean, what he means, I think, is you don't have to touch the surface with contaminated virus. Exposure risk, mobile payments keeps social distancing and avoids gathering around banks, ATMs, and shops, right? Um, I pasted the same thing. Okay. We also found evidence for performance risk for all the other mobile payment risks that we had collected. If you see the second last point and the last point, oh, I just have to move the ribbons up and down. So there is a problem of mobile payments too. Like I transacted bulk money, but it went to the wrong account. Exactly what I was saying, the mistakes or the incorrect transactions, which become very problematic for people. Around security risk, people have said, where is it? Mobile payment systems, though many have not matured enough on the security front and expose us to many frauds, right? So it doesn't matter what the reality is, by the way. This is what people feel, and this is what makes people use the technology. So right now, according to this, people feel that it is not, we don't have such security protocols. So probably, this kind of implies that it's not enough. I personally, because I work with mobile payments, I know we do have very good security measures, but since people feel that way, maybe making them aware and making them, tick that, you want it secured and things like that might make people feel more secured about the use and therefore promote the usage, right? So that is, I feel, some way this implies that that is how we can kind of promote mobile payment transactions, right? Now, that kind of sums up our study. I'll just quickly, not wasting too much time, I'll quickly brief us on the implications of the study and what we got from it. And I'll focus a little bit on the last implication. So basically, if you see the framework that we have here, and I would like to stress on it, well, because it's my study, I'll stress on it. So this framework is, of course, this is the first time that we have a framework that so clearly compares cash and mobile payments so directly, right? Secondly, this is the, first time that we have a framework where the risks of the two, rather than the positive point, the risks of the two and their trade-offs of the risks are being compared with each other. What we would like to stress on is, because I am, as you know, the joke, like people who have a PhD, they know only about their own thing and very convoluted vision. So I have only vision about mobile payments. I was very happy with the framework, but Professor Day and Professor Rai kind of pointed me out that this framework is so much more than mobile payments, right? And that's when we were discussing the implications and talking about it in the paper. So, well, yes, the story goes with mobile payment and cash, mobile payment and cash. But if you think about it, there are many other technologies in information systems which have a substitute, non-technical substitute, right? So what are the risks of each of them, right? So, or older technology substitute. What are the risks of all of them, right? Balancing the two. One thing, because now all of us are looking at Gen AI and their use in education and everything. One thing that comes to my mind is use of Gen AI for education by students has its own set of risks, because Gen AI sometimes gives very bad outputs, is very generic, etc. and its substitute is using books or original materials. So what are the risks of that? That you may not be able to finish the assignment on time because it's so hectic. So, anything we can actually, this framework is in a way so simplistic, although it looks like this, can be drawn up parallel with any technology that has a substitute and is kind of, you know, um, coming to the picture. People are using it, but people are going back to the substitute, going back and forth. So this kind of examination, this framework can help us a big deal with, right? So you just have to replace what goes inside the dotted box that we have this risks. You still have risks, but you have risks of that technology and its substitute, right? So we felt that this is one of the major contributions of the study, extending it beyond mobile payment literature. But even within mobile payment literature, looking at cash and the risks of cash, this one was very contextual in the case of COVID because we were drawing parallels with hazardous substitute. However, there are many other risks of cash also, right? One of the primary risk of cash is you don't want to carry cash, it might get stolen. You don't want to store cash in your home, it might get stolen. It might be hard to maintain, you might forget where you kept it. You have to remember to refill your purse. So all of these problems when you are traveling, right? So all of these problems are risks of cash, right? So future studies, right? We are moving away from COVID, but future studies can look at such risks of cash. And as you know, mobile payments or more digital payment technologies are coming into the picture, people can look at the varied risks of both the technologies. Another contribution, as I said, is the social risk that we are bringing in for the first time in this study. Another thing is for mobile payments, right? And from a practical point of view, this kind of gives us a contextual focus on how to predict that whether people are going to shift towards mobile payment or not. And accordingly, the service providers who really want to promote mobile payment, or even government who want to promote financial inclusion through mobile payment, can adjust things. What I mean is, let me give you an example. So during demonetization, people are anyway shifting to mobile payment, or during COVID, people are scared of cash and moving to mobile payment. So this is fine, right? So it is contextually, the balance will happen that when the risks of, if I go back to the framework, if the risks of cash is high, there's no cash, in demonetization, very high risk, you cannot transact. So anyway, mobile payment risks the effect of that will become very significant, and effect of mobile payment risks will reduce, as we see in COVID, right? Some of the mobile payment risks were not even recognized as important. So that will reduce and mobile payment use will increase, right? However, in contrast, in times of cybercrime, right, in times when you are seeing this news, and sometimes one or two news have a huge impact on you, you're hearing these stories. In such times when the risks of mobile payment become very accentuated, that's when government or service providers should step in and maybe have awareness programs, maybe send SMSs that it's fine, we are taking care of it. There's a lot of fraud news, but you be careful, we are being careful. Do like SBI does sometimes, sends out SMS and all of that. So that is the other thing, other implications, practical implications that we are drawing from this study. So yeah, I think I spoke for a long time. I'll just take a break, and if you have any questions, we can discuss that, or if you want to know more, we can talk about that. Yeah.
We have a couple of questions. Shraddha Jadhav has a question. And this is, what about the risk of scam transactions due to the use of mobile payment systems?
What are the risk of scam transactions due to the use of mobile payment systems? Okay, thank you, Shraddha. So that is good that you asked, because you remember when I was discussing the framework here, you see this dotted line from financial risk to mobile payment usage. So that financial risk that we are talking about is exactly what you are saying, scam transactions, right? So losing money because of fraudulent transactions in mobile payment, right? So we are capturing that. In this study, what we found out is because COVID-19 risks, the cash risks become so accentuated, so important, people kind of mentally, these are all not real risk, you understand? These are all perceived risk. People are saying that we fear this. So people kind of put that in a backseat of their mind, right? That is why we have the dotted line, the less significant line compared to the others. It's not that it's not important, as you can see in the qualitative study, right? People are talking about the mobile payment security and all of that. So during the context of COVID, because people were so worried about COVID, the scam related risks, although actually might have been quite high, but people were not thinking about it so much. However, what I posit from the framework itself, because of the contextual nature of the framework, that in the context now, when we don't have any lingering effect of COVID anymore, if we hear these news of scam, etc., the impact of this risk will increase significantly. So yes, there is the risk of scam transactions. It has been captured, but it has been captured through financial risk. Does that answer you, Shraddha? If you want, my paper, I'll just paste the copy of my paper in the chat. You can look at the appendix, the risk actual questions that captured the various risks, if that helps you.
Vivek,
Okay.
you can ask your question. You are a panelist now.
Hi, Vivek.
Hi, Avipsa. Very interesting study. Congratulations. So,
Thank
as
you.
a strategy scholar, you're always thinking of firm level implications. My question was building on your findings. Can there be firm level questions like, so banks who have more branches or ATMs in contaminated locations, would you expect them to promote mobile payments more? One, because there is more demand, as you show that there is more demand for mobile payments there. And second, also to save bank employees. So the cashier is counting cash all day. So he is also exposed to cash risk. From a firm level, also, uh, there is a kind of a risk of health risk also. So,
Yes, when you are saying, I'm thinking about it. So, when you say firm, I don't know if I told you earlier ever. So we are looking at merchants now, but merchants are not firms, by the way. Merchants as users, right?
right.
So for merchants, yes, we saw similar because they are again behaving as users. But you are saying that firms as units, whether they will be affected by the locational constraint construct,
And
right? Is
where they
that
will
your question?
promote more. So, from a bank's perspective, say a bank,
Mm-hmm.
there is a kind of a strategic trade-off between trying to promote more cash usage versus mobile usage. But in this case, when I know that the demand for mobile usage is more because of contact risks at contamination zones, would I kind of see more promotional incentives? So to use mobile. So if you use mobile, I give you some more discounts. So from a firm strategy also, and also to save bank employees, service employees from contamination risks. Basically.
Okay, so you are saying the reverse, that when people are
Yeah.
already adopting mobile payment, right? Do I have a reason to promote it more because it will cost me less, in the operational cost will be lesser to promote it more at that point in time?
Operational cost, and also I also want to save my employees from health risks. So even they are exposed to cash. If there is more cash transaction, I have to kind of also a cashier has to also kind of transact more on cash.
Okay. Yeah, I am still, thinking, but yes, you're right, because they kind of become the other side of the users, not exactly user per
Yes.
se, but how do I put it, as a recipient of the transaction system.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can be looked at. But now I think the context has to change, right? The study started during COVID, towards the end of COVID. But now I think if we change the context a little bit, maybe, you think about it from a rural area perspective, where anyway there might be a cash crunch, or sending cash there, refilling the ATMs, those kind of things I'm trying to think. So those kind of constraints, will there be a reason for, employees to promote mobile payment when they already know mobile payment is popular? I think that can be looked at. Of course, I can't say yes or no, but I think that can be looked at. That is a genuine, from the study, it feels like a genuine thing that is going to happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vivek, we can definitely catch up because that's a new question, research question you are posing. So yeah, we can talk about it more future. Because there is.
And we have Dr. Mohanty who has a question. Dr. Mohanty, you are a panelist now. Please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. It was a very interesting topic I found, like contactless and contact mobile. You have presented very nicely. So there is a question like, is there any quantitative measure of financial risk or performance
Yes,
risk
yes.
in the literature? Can you share
Yes.
one or two parameters?
Of course, one second. I'll just share it with you right now. I have the paper open. So and the mobile payment risks part we took directly from the literature. So the literature authors are also there. I'll just show you. Here. So if you, I'll share the paper with you right now. I don't know the access things. I mean, they don't even give me access. So I'll share the paper with you. So if you see here, right, I may lose money due to thefts. This is what Shraddha was also asking, right? So I may lose money using thefts. I am exposed to cyber criminals. My bank account is exposed to financial theft. So this is the financial risk. This is the privacy risk. We have put everything in the appendix itself. And these papers, these links of these papers, these are the papers from which we took the instrument. But again, this is our instrument. So you can use our instrument also, or you can use directly their instrument also. Plus, to add to it, I will tell you, there's the facets of risk paper by two major authors. One is Pavlo and another is Lu. I'll just, the pronunciation is problematic, so I'll just show you the two papers. So they work on facets of risk. So if you want any other facets of risk and their measures and all of that, that is also available with them. I'll quickly show you.
So the point is, like, which factor is you think will be affecting the business or the economy in a bigger way? Any
Which
specific
risks?
factor? Performance risk.
Oh, performance risk. Performance risk, yes. So that is what at least our study is saying, and the qualitative research is also saying. So performance risk, I feel is one of the major reasons right now, one of the major constraints mobile payment is facing. And as I was telling the story, right, unrelated to this study, we are looking at another study for vendor use. And many of these poor vendors, who are like street vendors and all, then I mean, for them, they're making so less money, so if they lose money it's a huge loss, right? And they said that this performance issue, like, money getting stuck, not actually fraud, not actually criminal, not theft. Sometimes people think it's theft, but somewhere in between it got stuck and then it went back to the original person's account, but this person took the service or took the product or whatever, and then they are not able to contact because they don't have that much of digital fluency to call the call center and tell what to do. So I feel, since you are asking me, my personal opinion is that that is one of the major roadblocks of mobile payment right now. Why? Because these vendors or these people are the kind of the backbone of our economy, right? 80%, 90% is on unorganized retails, right, for India. So if this kind of thing is solved, as you have rightly guessed, I think that will help.
Is it like some kind of dynamism in the transaction can be defined instead of static transactions in the performance?
You mean to say that can we look at the transaction beyond just performance, like how people are transacting? Is that you're asking?
Yeah. No, I'm asking about a parameter which is the most like significantly impact the performance of economy and business in terms of performance risk. Any specific parameter well defined in the literature, or you are
Oh,
having some
within the
insight?
performance risk. Okay, now I understood your question. Okay. There might be, I am not very sure within performance risk, but performance risk by itself is a risk. I'll just show you quickly. Sorry, this is very hard to scroll. One second.
I'm just asking about one or two parameters you can correlate, which is
So
well
if
defined.
so you're talking about like app processing incorrectly, app is not performing well. Look on the screen, right? The account credit shown on my app is not accurate all the time while using mobile, not that one, that is security risk. So these are the sub parameters of performance risk by itself. So are you asking which of them are more important in determining performance risk?
Yeah, I'm asking about any well-defined parameters, specific standard parameters. Like you are taking.
These, the ones I am highlighting, these.
Okay. Is it quantified or measurable?
Yes. My all the measures that I have done are measured through items in surveys in a quantitative manner. It is not qualitative. Qualitative was the additional study. But the actual measures are in a quantitative manner. The numbers are, the actual results and the numbers are given in the appendix. You can take a look.
Yeah, I will go through the paper, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll go through
so
the
just
paper.
I will share with you, just look at the appendix, okay? Because in the main paper, the stories are going one after the other. The appendix
Yeah.
has what you are looking for, right?
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, of course. Yeah. Okay, this Dipankar has next, right? Dipankar's question. Cash transaction is highest with the elders, as you mentioned, and they are one of the most exposed to communicable diseases. That's a very important, interesting point. Can we make adoption of mobile payments as a part of the healthcare campaign? Give a confidence. Maybe cost of insurance covered in the reduction. Very, very interesting point. I'll be honest with you. So in this study, we did not specifically, I was telling a story to, motivate it. But in this study, we did not specifically focus on elderly people, but we have in the control variables, the age factor. And as you rightly pointed out, age is significant. So as people's age grow, they value these risks more. They perceive risks more, accurately said. So I can't, I can't give you the answer because we haven't focused on aging population. Sadly enough, I started a study on elderly people, and why it has not progressed much, to be honest, is because it's very hard to find elderly people who are actually using mobile payments. And people who have not used mobile payment, looking at asking them why they haven't used, they don't even, are not even considering using it. So kind of, they're worried about it and not considering using it. So I can try to answer it, but honestly, I don't know if it can be, it can be insured in case there is a fraud. Again, to be honest, if a fraud is reported, I think within one day, in India, I think it is 12 hours or one day. If it is reported, the government has to, not government, sorry, the service provider has to pay you back if you have not shared the OTP. But often for older people, what happens is they kind of share the OTP, right? Because they are not so digitally trained the way we are. We are born, I mean, we had access to digital infrastructure very early age. So for us, it's all very easy to understand, but they do that. So all of these constraints are there. Therefore, they are more susceptible to fraud. So, however, if we keep on kind of giving them insurance and repairing their fraud, there would be other implications. I'm just saying it has nothing to do with my study. I'm just like brainstorming myself because it's a very interesting point. So I'm thinking there would be other repercussions that, they will be even less careful, or they themselves might, pretend to have a fraud and get the insurance money. All of this will happen. So it's more of a business decision to make if they want to do it, how much they value the elderly customers profile, and those kind of questions will come in. For the government, yes, the government can definitely suggest it. But again, if money is involved, the insurance company should see profit in that rather than losses. So I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer you yes or no wise, but definitely I will look into it, and this also motivates me to pursue the elderly study that I was doing. Thank you so much, Dipankar.
And Shraddha has another question. Shraddha, you are already a panelist. Can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Okay. Yes. Hi, Professor. So my question is it possible to protect the customers or consumers who are using digital apps widely to protect themselves from like commercial surveillance and profiling? Because almost all payment apps are tracking the spending data in terms of how the behavioral spending is happening, and that can be malicious at some point. So, are there any safety nets in place already? Is anybody working towards it? If not, what can we do? And can that be part of the study that you have presented here today?
It is not directly a part of this study. One of the earlier studies, what government can do. Is Professor Dey there? He works on policy. He would
Professor
be.
Dey had to leave.
Oh, okay. So he works on policy, so I was hoping he would help me out here. So what I understand is that anyway, the policy in India currently on surveillance is improving, but it is not in place yet, as in, so there is layers of data, right? As in your personally identifiable information is not shareable even today, right? But demographic information, right? Who you are, but not who you are, but your age and all of that, and your spending patterns and all of that. So these companies make a lot of money from sharing that. So there is debates going on, discussions going on how to restrict or how to make you own the data that you have, right? Like, I should be allowed to say which of my transaction data can be shared with a third party, which cannot be shared with a third party. But there is a repercussion to that. So we are getting all of these services now for free, right? And that is why, they are making us tick those things. I am fine with sharing when we install the app, right? So right now we are powerless because we are getting the services for free, or there is no paid option that we can go for the paid option and we don't have to share our private information. That option is not there. There are debates saying that there should be layers, right? I should be allowed to choose how much I want to share. And if there's a payment cost coming associated with that, maybe I should be allowed to choose that at least. So that is under discussion. It is, as you can see as a consumer and you are using it, it is still not implemented, right? So that is all I know, but exact where our policy is, I honestly do not know exactly our status right now, but policy is in place, right? I mean, it's under discussion, this kind of things. How much can be shared, what can be shared.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Professor.
This is Venkatesh. I have a question. It's more
Yes.
from a layman's point of view. Now, if I make a mistake in my transaction, this is more from the transaction risk perspective. Supposing I make a wrong transaction of specifying a wrong account number, and I make the transaction through the bank, and this has happened to me a couple of times earlier. I realize that, and I go to the bank, and the bank is there behind because they know me. I am the customer of the bank for a long time, and they help me out in talking to that party who they have made the wrong payment to, and then help me in getting that money back. So, from the experience, does a similar treatment happen with the payment? Supposing I do the same wrong transaction through Paytm or through PhonePe, would they give me so much of consideration and make me get my money back or something like that? So, because my relation with them is not as strong as the relation that I have with the bank. So, from that angle, he is making a transaction or a serious transaction through this kind of means is more risky.
So I highlighted one line there. So we are trying to capture exactly what you said. No, that's actually a very common issue, right? Because you're
Okay.
typing, you're not counting the money. So the process mistakes is very high, right? People actually scored very high on that, right? So what you said is actual issue, and I will give you the answer based on the other interviews that we are conducting right now. Based on that, I'll give you the answer. So actually, you are right. They are not very friendly about it. The main reason, what I understand is, see, SBI has a lot of control on the money because SBI is the transacting bank, right? However, Google Pay, Paytm is sitting on top of SBI as a separate layer and talking to SBI, and then the transaction is done by SBI, and then you get the thing, right? They are not partners, they are just sitting on top and they are talking to SBI. So it becomes harder also for them to, first of all, do that process. They cannot automatically revert a transaction that way, which SBI can actually do. So the workaround of this is, but for us, like as I was saying, for the small vendors, it's very difficult to understand what to do, where to go to. The workaround for us, I feel, is because SBI is very accommodating of that. That is very true, because I have also heard that stories. So even for Google Pay transactions, finally, if it is the SBI is your account is with SBI, you can still approach SBI for blocking the transaction or reverting the transaction, right? But you are right by saying that Paytm, Google Pay, from the interviews, people have said they have tried their best, but incorrectly done transaction, consciously but incorrectly done transactions, they are not very accommodative of. I personally, unrelated to my study, have received message from a person saying, I have incorrectly sent you, can you send me back the money? So that means, Google Pay is not accommodating of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Professor, would you like to give any closing comments?
I think now we're coming close to it. So thank you, Professor Avibsa, for this insightful discussion. And we could see from the audience the questions they had, and all of us relate to mobile payment, right? So, and you continue doing it, and I'm sure you will continue doing in future as well, this research on mobile payment. And with the penetration of mobile payment, I think new issues are going to come up, and hopefully you'll also get to study the older generation or the senior citizens. That one of the questions also came from the participant. That is one interesting area to look at. Yeah, so thank you again, and hope to invite you again when you get your next publications in such top IAS journals. Right? Hopefully that moment comes soon, and hopefully others also publish in such top journals, so we can celebrate their win as well.
So I don't know if it is an inappropriate question. So you are not, like, since IMB is doing, IMB faculties are not presenting, is it?
I'm so sorry, I didn't get it.
IMB faculties are not presenting, is it? It's only invited.
We will definitely have IMB faculty also.
Okay. Then you should not have to worry about it, right? Like, you are there, Shamkudip is there, so you shouldn't have to worry about that or wait for me.
We have a couple of others as well, right? India-based authors who have published, and we'll have that one in December, right? Professor who has published, Professor Ayushi Tandon, who just moved to Ireland.
Oh, yeah. She published in ISR recently, no? Yeah.
The session is going to be by her in December.
Yeah. So very, very interesting. You wouldn't believe, since you're saying this. So the first time I had presented in the same webinar, it was arranged by Professor Shankudip. So that time, Ayushi had attended the webinar as a student.
Right. So you inspired her,
And
now
it's a small world, and it's so nice to see her, where she is right now. Amazing. And I think that time you were also a student, possibly. And then, okay. So all the best to all of us. Let us all, continue doing what we are doing. And thank you so much I did not expect 24 turnout. It was 36. I saw it was 36. So I did not understand.
something at some point in time when we started.
Yeah.
But even a lot of people have left, so
No, but 36 is very, very high. I mean, if I do something in my college and you ask people without attendance to come, I cannot imagine 36 people coming. So thank you so much for joining. I have told them I will send them the paper. I will send you the paper itself, okay? Forget the legalities of it. I wrote it, I can send it, I guess. So I am posting the paper here because in the chat itself, it's uploading. So because sometimes, it's accessing is a little bit difficult.
For the audience who is still there with us,
yes. Professor, I will make one small announcement with your permission.
Yeah.
Before we formally close, all of you would have already got the communication on the upcoming workshop on scholarship in the age of AI. And this is basically a 2-day workshop, and this is being held in association with the India chapter of Association for Information Systems. I'm posting the link here. Please go through that. To those who have not visited the link to go through what the workshop is about and to register, I'm pasting the link on the chat. So please go through that, and we have only 2 days left for the registration. So please make use of it.
I think I have classes, so I won't be able to attend, but I think that is like when I saw the first email, it's just the most relevant thing to discuss right now. You will be talking about Gen AI also, right, in the workshop? It's the most, I mean, whoever is
We are
ready.
not, the purpose is not to give any shortcuts or like tools, AI is a tool to use, but have a critical conversation about what does it mean to do scholarly work today when AI is getting around, even use it, but how to be effective and ethical user of AI in scholarship. So we'll have some hands-on, but some critical discussions as well. So please share with IIM Calcutta colleagues and students.
I will definitely, but I think everybody in the link has got it, but I will definitely also share, because that is the discussion that is going on now, right? How much do we use? What do we use? What are the implications? Should we block? Should we allow? So that is what, where we are still now. So I think that is very, very relevant now. So I wish it was not my heavy teaching semester, but hope, you have a good time there. Okay, thank you so much, Mayank. I'll catch up with you on other things. Bye-bye.
Thank you.